Hello, everyone, and welcome back. This is part two of breathing and sounding. I absolutely love this module. It is something that obviously we teach a lot of, Nicole and I, with private clients, but it's so dear to our hearts because the yogis really understood the power of breathing, long before it was researched in modern day. Yogis have been doing this practice for thousands and thousands of years. So we're going to take a look at nose breathing versus mouth breathing, talking a little bit about that, and why mouth breathing leads to disease in the body, it leads to ill health, it leads to poor sleep, and why, as a priority, if you have been suffering from conditions or symptoms or pain or tension that are unexplained, that thinking about regulating and working with your nose and proper breathing is the first place you want to start. So what happens with the body when we breathe through the nose? Well, the nose is designed to purify, to heat, to moisten, and to pressurize the air. And as the air moves through the nose, it moves through something called turbinates or the sinus cavity, and the air becomes hydrated. So it's like a quarter cup of water that is added to the air before it actually reaches the lungs. When we breathe through our nose, it increases our oxygen absorption by 10 to 15%. So one of the coolest things about breathing through the nose is that the sinuses will release nitric oxide. And this is a molecule that helps oxygen reach our cells. So that's one major reason why we want to be breathing through the nose. Nitric oxide is a muscle dilator, so it will open the upper airways and help us with our oxygen uptake. And then in this chapter, we share humming breathing or Brahmari breathing. And the yogis knew this, they've known it for thousands of years, that humming while breathing will increase nitric oxide production 6 times. So what happens is that actually converts to 18% more oxygen that we take in our cells than if we're just mouth breathing. The other big thing is that the nose is the first line of defense, right? It like if you think about these turbinates and these little hairs inside of the nose, they're filtering out bacteria, viruses, and pollutants. It's keeping the nasties out of the body. So there can be some correlation between being a mouth breather and having a higher propensity for sickness or always catching colds. So if we've been a mouth breather, it becomes very challenging to breathe through the nose. And yet when we practice and we integrate back into nose breathing, the nose starts to function better, it hydrates, it starts to moisten, and we start to be able to use it. Now let's talk in contrast about mouth breathing. The number one reason not to mouth breathe is because we overbreathe. So what happens is we deplete our carbon dioxide levels within our body. Remember I said a moment ago that we need CO2 to take in O2. So if we have less CO2 in the body, then we absorb less O2, which affects our cells and our organs and our physical processes. When we mouth breathe, it causes the soft tissues in the back of the mouth to become loose and to flex inward. And mouth breathing causes the body to lose about 40% more water, which is why mouth breathers tend to need to drink more. Drinking more water isn't a bad thing, but that also will lead to increased urination. And for the ladies, this is an important one, is that as we get towards the age that we're at, I'm going to say premenopause, perimenopause, menopause. As we get older, there's tends to be this belief that, oh, I'm getting older, so I just have to go to the bathroom more. I have to get up in the middle of the night to pee. But when we mouth breathe, we don't enter as deep of a sleep. So when we are nose breathing, In a deep sleep, the pituitary gland will secrete vasopressin, which tells the cells to store water, right? So it reduces that need to get up and pee. But if we've fallen into a habit of mouth breathing, that's not happening. And so what it does, it triggers the need to pee in the middle of the night. So what's the remedy? Learning how to transition back to nose breathing, which we will talk about. So take home point number one is that the nose is a use it or lose it appendage, right? It can be challenging to transition back to nose breathing if you have been a mouth breather for a while. I know I have clients where they've said, it causes me stress. It's hard to breathe through the nose, right? And the easier it becomes, the more you use it, right? The more things free up in the nose. And the second take home point is that mouth breathing begets more mouth breathing, right? And nose breathing encourages more nose breathing. So it's important that we practice just like anything else. So why have we become mouth breathers, right? The causes can be many things. Dry air, stress, inflammation, allergies, pollution, pharmaceuticals. But a big part of it has been the transition to softer blended foods away from mastication, chewing, right? In our more primitive ways, we were hunter-gatherers. We had to chew our meat. And this idea of chewing is what increases the width of the palate. It keeps the jaw strong and wide. Another big part of that process is keeping space for the teeth, keeping the jaw wide, has a lot to do with whether we are breastfed or whether we're bottle fed. So we use a lot more muscles, which keeps the palate of the mouth wider, stronger. If we were breastfed, unfortunately, not all of us had a choice. Some of us were bottle fed. We use less muscles. It changes the shape of the mouth. So the mouth becomes more oval. There's more crowding of the teeth. There's more removal of the teeth. And this all leads to kind of more of an oval shape in the mouth where it supports the propensity for mouth breathing versus nose breathing. So, historically, we chewed food for up to 4 hours a day, causing our mouth, our teeth, our throats, and our faces to be a lot wider, and our faces were more pronounced. But now, with our heavily processed foods, we don't chew much. And then we're also in a very rushed or fast-paced environment. We live where we're always rushing. So we should be chewing our food, but we, chew maybe 5, 6 times. We should be chewing up to 40 times and starting that mastication process. So it is true that breathing less can reverse your health problems. So we, in this course, pull a lot of the most amazing research from James Nestor and his colleagues for the research that they did, where they stopped the breathing through their nose and only breathe through their mouth for a while, and then they did the reverse. And what is true and what was realized is that, breathing less is more. So we want to be breathing less, which increases carbon dioxide in the body and increases oxygen absorption. So I'm going to share my screen here. We're there. All right, so we want to breathe less. We want to breathe less and slower, which is what we did in our breathing rate assessment. So 5.5 seconds, 5.5 breaths per minute is about what the optimal breathing rate. That's what has been researched by James Nestor. We should take in at rest per minute about 5.5 liters of oxygen or of air. So according to the research from James Nestor's book, our breathing rate should be approximately 5.5 breaths per minute. And in order to achieve this, we take in breath, we inhale for 5.5 seconds, and we exhale for 5.5 seconds, which is what we did in the breathing rate assessment. And this rhythm is the best way to meet your optimal carbon dioxide O2 levels. So let's talk about transitioning to effective nose breathing. You will notice that in the PDF practices, right? How do you do that? You are breathing out, you're grabbing your nose. This is for those of you who are really stuffy. You're breathing out, pinching your nose. You are moving your head around to distract yourself until you feel a strong need to breathe in, and then you breathe in. That'll help clear your sinuses. And then for yourself, the practices in this module are to conduct your breathing rate assessment. Please log it, notice, and then go ahead and work with the breathing assessment meditation audio, and then check back in again. Okay? So let's look at this diagram now, just to dispel some of the myths around what is good breathing, what is not good breathing, what's dysfunctional, what's not functional. So essentially, we're going to start at number 1 here. So functional breathing involves using the nose. We have a slow respiratory rate, which I said 5.5 breaths per minute, 5.5 seconds. Number 3 is you have passive upper chest muscles, as you experienced in the practice. You have good diaphragmatic movement. So the diaphragm, the breathing muscle, is doing the job of breathing. So let's have a look at the diaphragm for a moment. I haven't shown you a picture of the diaphragm. Important that we have a look at it. That's what the diaphragm looks like. You can see how it is like it tense. So when you breathe in this dome, it domes down. And when you breathe out, it domes back up. Here's another diagram. I think there can be a lot of confusion with breath. I think people often think that when we breathe in, the diaphragm goes up versus going down. So I just want to clear that up. I've had many clients say that to me, oh, I visualize it differently. So it's a large dome. It's shaped like a parachute, separates the heart and lungs from the abdominal organs. Again, as you can see here, the heart and lungs live above, and we've got all the organs packed tightly below. The interesting thing about this action of the diaphragm is it should be doing this action 20,000 times a day. Right? So a functional diaphragm that's moving well is pumping and massaging the organs below it 20,000 times a day, and inversely pumping and massaging the bottom of the heart 20,000 times a day. The top of the diaphragm attaches to the dura of the heart, so it is what keeps our heart healthy. Again, another reason to breathe well. Okay. So if we go back to our comparison, I must have gone past it, not intentionally. How did I miss it? This is what happens when you have so many amazing visuals. Dear. Okay. So I said normal diaphragm movement, which means the diaphragm domes down, broadens as you breathe in, releases and domes up as you breathe out. There's 3D movement of the ribs and the torso. So when we think about the rib cage, this action is happening. The breath is inaudible. So functional breathing doesn't have a lot of sighs or sounds. It's not loud. It has a steady rhythm. That supports good CO2 levels in the body, healthy O2 levels in the body, and this lowers our blood pH. Now, if we compare mouth breathing, there's a faster respiratory rate. We're breathing in often faster. We have active upper chest muscles. Mouth breathing doesn't engage the diaphragm in the same way. There's abnormal diaphragm movement. Often, we talked about it, the movement is vertical, so vertical movement of the chest, which is up and down. With dysfunctional breathing, often there's lots of sighs, sniffs, coughs, and yawns. The rhythm is more chaotic. Reduced CO2 levels, starved cells. The cells are starved for O2, and there's increased blood pH. Okay. So the practices in this module, vooing on an exhale. Just talk about the why. When you make the voo sound, it is calming for your nervous system. So remember last module, we talked all about nervous system regulation. Breathing is one of the easiest ways to regulate your nervous system, as is sounding, humming. So it just goes like this. You can do it with me. We'll do it 3 times. We're going to inhale, exhale, voo on the out breath. So inhale through your nose. Voo. Notice how long that makes my exhale. What it does is it really helps your diaphragm to take the long, slow lengthening that is required for good diaphragmatic movement. So we'll do that 2 more times. You can feel that in your body when you're ready. Inhaling through your nose, exhale, voo. Voo. Pause to sense and feel. How's that affecting your breathing? How's that affecting your nervous system? Try 1 more with me. Inhale, exhale, voo. Voo. So an incredibly powerful practice, one of my favorites. There's also a seated strap around your diaphragm breathing practice in this module. This is really good if you have been a chest breather, you're not sure if you're getting the diaphragm engagement. Using the feedback to your brain with that strap around the lowest ribs is really powerful. And then our practice number 4 is alternate nostril breathing. So also called Nadi Shodhana. There are many variations of Nadi Shodhana. In this module, we are focusing on 4-4. Why? Let's understand the why of alternate nostril breathing. So when you breathe in through your right nostril, this is your warming breath. It's also tied to your sympathetic system. So it's your energizing breath, the right side. The left side is tied to your cooling breath, your calming breath, your parasympathetic branch of your nervous system. So when we start to alternate, we go back and forth with the breathing. What we're doing is we're teaching the nervous system how to balance out. We're teaching the nostrils how to unclog. We're teaching the body how to start to downshift, downgrade. And this is, of course, very calming. It's also really nourishing because you are helping your system get in that optimal O2, right? So we're not using the mouth, we're not over breathing. So amazing, amazing, amazing breathing practice. Okay. So you can use your thumb and pointer finger, or if you want to be a little bit more traditional to the yogic way, you use your thumb and your ring finger. So I'm just going to lead you through 2 rounds, but ideally you are practicing for 10 to 20 rounds. So you want to hit that magic duration time of about 12 minutes per day. 12 minutes per day is really kind of the optimal to support a regulated nervous system. So let's take another breathing break. You can have your eyes closed for this. Do not have to have the eyes open. All right. So you're going to close off. You're going to close off your right nostril. And you're going to breathe in for 4 counts. So in the left nostril. So in, 2, 3, 4. You're going to close both nostrils for 1, 2. You're going to exhale right, 2, 3, 4, and close nostrils, both nostrils for 1, 2. And now you're going to inhale through the right side, 2, 3, 4. Close the top, hold 1, 2. Exhale left, 2, 3, 4. Hold the bottom, 1, 2. Inhale left, 2, 3, 4. Hold the top, 1, 2. Exhale right, 2, 3, 4. Pause at the bottom, 1, 2. Inhale right, 2, 3, 4. Hold the top, 1, 2. Exhale right, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 1, 2. Inhale right, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2. Exhale left, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 1, 2. Inhale right, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 1, 2. Exhale left, 2, 3, 4. Pause, 1, 2. And then gently release your hand. Come into silence, breathing and sensing and feeling. And as you're pausing to sense and feel, can you feel those qualities of both energizing and calming, warming and cooling simultaneously? Good. If you have any questions about that practice, you can always post it to the community. We want to talk a little bit more before we bring this to a close about how the breath affects our mind, the quality of the mind. So remembering in the last module, we talked about the nervous system and nervous system dysregulation or sensitization. We talked about how that can mean that we're stuck in our breath, or we have a very scattered or racing breath, or over breathing. So remembering that when we are in a sympathetic state, or even in a dorsal vagal state, remembering that we just have too much energy or we can't access the energy, both of these places, the mind cannot be still. We have a hard time accessing the mind. So when the nervous system is sensitized or threatened, the mind will become scattered. And this can lead to compulsive thoughts about the future or the past. It can cause us to experience poor memory, mental confusion, or a lack of clarity and focus. So when you're going about your day and you are, let's say, at the office and you have just come out of a series of meetings and things feel overwhelming because you have some deadlines and some projects due, if we ignore the sensitization of the nervous system and we ignore the state of our breath, it's not going to support us. However, what we can do is we can come into that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, inhale and exhale for 5. Or if you're inclined, you could come into your 4-2-4 breathing practice. Or you could come into your inhale, exhale, VU, all of which are going to show your nervous system regulation, safety, and help calm your mind. So remembering that when we talked about polyvagal theory last module, when we're in a ventral vagal state, the mind is able to be present, to focus, to make decisions, and the mind is able to engage with what is in front of it. So I'm going to share my screen again to relate back to what we talked about last module. Polyvagal theory, breath, and the mind relationship. The reason why we continue to weave back in this course, we weave back to the previous modules, is because everything is interrelated, right? We are a system. If our breathing is regulated, our mind will be calmer. If our body is calmer, our breath will be more regulated. If our body is calmer, our mind will be calmer. So we are working to support regulation of the nervous system, to help support our breath, to release muscle tension and regulation across the whole system. So in this diagram, you can see that we have there's two qualities we're looking at, the quality of the mind and breathing pattern. So remember in dorsal vagal, that is more where we feel immobilized, we feel stuck, we feel frozen, we feel helpless. The mind is more shut down. We are more in disassociation. When we're there, our breathing is going to be disturbed. It's often a frozen or reverse breathing pattern, which means instead of the diaphragm doming down, it actually lifts up when we breathe in. We want to move out of that place. Sometimes we have to land there because life throws us a curveball, but that's not where we want to live, right? We actually want to live on the other end, over here, ventral vagal state, where we want to practice living, doing, being from presence and clarity, where we're able to make decisions and we're focused. In this ventral vagal state, remember, it's our safe state. It's where we're socially engaged, where we can rest and relax, where we can digest. So this is where our breathing becomes more functional, right? It's less, it's slower, it's rhythmic. In the middle, remember, if we have mobilization with fear, so if we have fight or flight or we're stuck in a sympathetic dominant state, remember that how does that show up? It shows up sometimes as worry, hypervigilant thoughts. It can be obsession or scattered thoughts. So again, we're thinking about present or past. And our breathing here can be disturbed. So rapid over breathing, right? When there's a fire in the neighbor's house, you're definitely going to be in this spinal sympathetic state. You're going to jump to it. You're going to go and do what you need to do to make sure everybody's safe and call the fire department and whatever it is that needs to happen. We need that. And we need to be breathing more when we're doing that. But then once that danger is over, we want to step back into the place where we're balanced and rhythmic. Our breath is slower. Okay. I talked a little bit about alternate nostril breathing. I just want to show you slide number 117, which is in your PowerPoint presentation. This is alternate nostril breathing. As I mentioned, it's called Nadi Shodhana. It just means purification. So we're purifying the body by working with alternate nostril breathing, and the yogis have known and studied and used this practice for thousands of years. It is still one of the best practices to rebalance your system. Sorry, I just realized that I wasn't screen sharing there. So there's our little alternate nostril breathing lady. Remembering presence is the doorway to healing. We talked about humming and why humming is so powerful. So whether you are just placing your tongue on the roof of your mouth or you're working with the longer practice of Vu-A-Yi, either of these are powerful. So we are going to end this part 2 with some Vu-A-Yi sounding and tapping. You already learned this in the module from 2 weeks ago. As I mentioned last time, and I'll mention it again, this is a powerhouse practice. If you have nervous system dysregulation and you need to get back into the present and you really want to regulate your system, work with this practice. Start with the Vu, then the Ah, then the E, then add the tapping, because it is very powerful. All right, so we're going to do 3 of them together. You can decide if you want to do the tapping. Remember, the tapping is the chest and on the side of the neck. Or just do the Vu-A-Yi, the expressive. All right, so we're going to start with eyes closed for a moment. I want you to tune into your system, remembering you're always asking your system, does my system need this practice? How is my system showing up right now? What's the state of your nervous system? Get a sense of that. We'll do this 3 times to end. We're putting it all together now, the power of breath and sounding. All right. Take a nice big inhale with me. Vu-A-Yi. Closing your eyes, breathing, sensing, and feeling. If your system feels like it can tolerate another pass of that, you can join me. Otherwise, you can just sit in the resonance of the sound. So again, nice big breath in through the nose. Vu-A-Yi. Join me if you like. One more. Feeling the effects of this practice. Vu-A-Yi. Good. So that will conclude the content and teaching portion of this module. The most important thing is just to get practicing, to make these practices your go-to. So stressful moment at work, what practice can you start to explore? Before bed, not sleeping well, what practice can you explore? So 4-2-4 or 3-3-3 alternate nostril breathing. And then just really paying attention to how these practices are affecting your nervous system. If you are a mouth breather, make it your project to transition to nose breathing. So in the PDF, we also talk about using mouth tape, a piece of 3M tape, or buying specific mouth tape so that you're learning how to go to sleep with your mouth tape. That will encourage your nose to be your primary breathing tool, which will have and support longevity and balanced health. So if you have any questions about this module, please post them to the community. And I want to thank you for joining me. All right, we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.